Good morning. Good morning, all.
Hey, Stacy. Hey, Phil.
Phil, I've been looking forward to this all week.
I'm going to mute you guys because I'm getting ready to grind some coffee.
Okay.
I must be having some kind of problems.
You're a little blurry, and I know you've been working with Kathy on doing that online presentation. I hope that's going to work for you. And if not, we'll just be interested in hearing about the book. You're much clearer now, Phil. Good morning, Margaret and Janet.
Good morning.
Good morning. What are you doing? We're all so quiet this morning.
I know Phil's working hard on getting that video connection that he'd been working with Kathy on this week. So hope it works, and otherwise we'll just be interested in hearing what he has to say about it.
Yeah.
Phil, from this end, you keep freezing up. Good morning, Karen.
Good morning. Loved the video of the little boy in the mirror.
Wasn't that great?
That made my day.
Well, made mine too. I've, emailed my daughter-in-law and told her to check my Facebook. I check hers because she posts pictures of my grandson, but normally don't post much. And I love that so much. I posted it and just enjoyed seeing that boy
cute.
trying to figure that out. Was just Karen's referring to a really cute post somebody sent me, and I put it on Facebook just because it was a little, maybe 18-month-old, trying to figure out what was behind his reflection in a mirror. And it was just too cute for words. He kept checking behind the mirror and coming back and then jumping into the mirror like he was going to surprise the image. Maybe it was the first time I'd ever seen a mirror. Who knows? But it was awful cute. I just loved it. Good morning, Susan. Glad you're here.
Good morning.
Wendy's doing some coffee, so she'll be right back. Phil's coming on and going to try and come on again. He's doing our presentation today, and he worked with Kathy all week on how to get it up, but he was trying to do either a TED Talk or something like that. Good morning, Phil.
Oh, man.
Hi, Wendy. Hi, Mimi.
Hey, Mimi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mimi, you always look so awake.
Oh, not today. I tell you what, I didn't oversleep, but I almost did. I forgot to set my alarm, and I woke up at about, what is it, 20 till 8, and I said, oh my gosh, I gotta get up and get dressed. I got Zoom meeting.
Well, I've got to leave early because we're doing what for one of our neighbors, we're doing a drive-by virtual birthday party.
Oh, well, that'll be fun.
And I'm kind of got conned into leading it. So I hope it'll go okay.
I'm sure it'll go great. And Phil had to reboot his computer. So he is rebooting it and will be back with us shortly. And Wendy is going to be next week. So when she gets back from brewing her coffee, she's going to join us and we'll ask her for a little thumbnail sketch. And for any of you that weren't aware, the Harkeys are moving the end of this month. And we have scheduled a drive-by farewell to them. Sunday the 23rd. 6 to 7 o'clock, and a blast will be sent out from our church. So we'll all receive notice of that. But I didn't know who all might not see that. So I wanted to make sure at least this gang heard about it. I think that's I'm with you. It's a creative way to do it. The fact that we all wish we could give hugs and wish happy birthdays and whatever in person, but at least they will leave Newbern knowing that a lot of their pals showed up to wish them well.
Stacy, let me do my thing now, if it's okay.
Yes, that's fine. Mindy is up next week, so she's going to give us a thumbnail of her presentation.
So I'm sure probably the majority name, we've done a bunch of his stuff at church, and I'll actually go down the list of some of them as reminders next week. But for 20 years, from 1984 till 2004, he was the dean of the chapel at Duke. And as Rad and I have always considered Duke Chapel our second church home, we were able to foster a fairly close relationship with him during those years, particularly while my kids were up at college. But he is just an unbelievably prolific and well-recognized writer. I mean, he's probably written, 70 or 80 books. But he's also extremely and incredible. Now I would imagine his mid-70s, 74, I think. I think he's the same age as President Trump, actually. And he just finished his memoir, the title of which is Accidental Preacher. And it tells about his family life in the South, about how he came to ministry, about his days in parish ministry, his days at the university, his days of tromping all over the world, giving sermons and lectures. And it's a book that will make you think, but it also will make you laugh hysterically. And so I'm looking forward to sharing it with you guys next week.
Wendy, one of the things I discovered was what I said, I like sitting out on my porch so much and listening to our sermons. And I thought, well, maybe I'll digress just a little bit. So I actually went to his webpage, and you can access, I think it's through Duke, but you can access a lot of his past sermons, which is wonderful.
So you have the flavor already, right?
Yeah, I mean, I found out there, I may not have an hour and a half to listen to all the music, but I can quickly get to his sermon. But yeah, and I've liked his books before, and I said I like. He's got a very edgy sense of humor, which I really like.
Yeah.
Lovely. Well, we'll look forward to hearing from you next week, Wendy. You're kind of coming in and going out, but
we're up at the mountains.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Okay. Well, we're just grateful you're here and grateful for this back. And Phil, I'll turn the program over to you. I hope. Phil, it's over to you.
Uh-oh.
I'm having all kinds of trouble. Can anyone
I
hear me?
I think you're muted, Phil.
No.
How about now?
I can hear you.
I don't know. Can anyone hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Something's going on with my speakers. Anyway, should we start now, Stacy?
Yes, that would be perfect.
Okay.
I'd
I'd like to
thank
thank
Stacy for organizing
this
event here
all the time this
summer.
summer. And Brent has done a great job for so long.
Hope to see him back. I haven't seen him for a while.
Also
like
like
to thank
Kathy
who helped me with how to share it. Hopefully that'll work better than the start here. Let's open up with a quick word of prayer. Praise the Heavenly Father, loving God, we're grateful for this day. We're thankful for this opportunity to meet, even though through the cumbersome of electronic media. We look forward to worship you together. And we pray that you will continue to guide our scientists, help get out of the pandemic. Pray for those who lost loved ones and are suffering. We lift them up to you, Lord God. In the name we pray.
Bill, do you have Zoom on two devices open? There's somebody,
I had.
and it's real echoey.
Okay. Okay. Is that better?
It is.
Okay. Yeah, for some reason, I'm not getting the audio from you. Maybe I'll figure that out here in a minute. You not understand that, but I'll just kind of plunge ahead. I am going to try to push this technology a little bit by doing a share screen, so I hope that works. Let's see. I have a video to show, but I wanted to show you the book. Okay, so Stacy, can you see that?
I can.
Okay. All right, so this is a book that I became aware of this year and got it, read it. It follows the conversion of a scientist from confirmed atheist to a devout follower of Christ. And I've read a lot of books on science and faith. It's something I'm very interested in. But this one was not like most. It's a curious book in that it's part a memoir, part research, it's part expository, and also part Christian apologetic. A little bit about the author here, Garte. He's a former tenured professor at biochemistry at Rutgers and University of Pittsburgh. He later became a division director of the Center for Scientific Review at the National Institute of Health, which is the NIH. The current head of the NIH, of course, is Francis Collins, who wrote The Language of God, another good science-based book. He's published more than 200 peer-reviewed scientific papers, and is also a fellow of the American affiliation, scientific affiliation, the ASA, which is an international network of Christians in science. And that's how I became aware of him. I've seen him and never really met him personally, but I've seen him talk at a few of our annual meetings. One reviewer had described him as a polymath. That was an interesting word to me, so I had to look that up. And a polymath is a individual whose knowledge spans a significant number of subjects and known to draw from complex bodies of work from different fields. Another reviewer had said that he's winsome. I never heard of that one, so I had to look that up. And it's a childlike charm or appeal. So I'll let you make that judgment when you see a video from him. Okay, so my impression after hearing him was that this guy's really smart. He was raised in Brooklyn in a non-religious Russian Jewish family who had deep commitments to the Communist Party. And he was reared to believe that religion was not only wrong, but evil. His parents' atheism was passionate and really felt deeply. Like all faiths, Garte says that faith I was born into raised questions. Interestingly, with the help of science, Garte says he began to lose his faith in atheism. So like any good researcher, he lays out in the beginning of his book the purpose of his book. He says, in this book, I will try to show you how a belief in God, the Creator, should always be in tune with and never opposed to modern science. I've written this book more as a guide to the perplexed for people of faith or open-minded atheists who wish to embrace the modern world of science and technology. So perhaps you know somebody like this that is sort of a seeking and trying to figure this all out. This book would be good for that. It's laid out in two parts. The first part is called Getting There, and that deals with the issues, mainly scientific, but also some social and philosophical thoughts that persuaded Garte's eventual conversion to Christianity. So it's sort of how he got to where he ended that. The second part is issues and questions, and here he deals with questions he had to face once he was committed to faith. The problem of evil, love and freedom, chance and will, and most applicable to the work is the relationship between science and faith. And that led into, of course, a hot topic of evolution and Christianity. So we're not going to cover all that, but I do want to really focus mainly on his conversion experience, how he got to where he's at. So as he considered Christianity or God itself, he had a lot of questions. But what really brought him to a wonderment, or even to the point of questioning, is science, his entry into science, his love of science. And because of his background in biochemistry, he had questions like, why does every answer we get from research into any branch of science always leads to more questions? We never really answer anything. We always come with more questions. Why is complexity the rule in nature? Why is biology, life so complex? So he writes, there's a quote from his book, as a young atheist, I studied biochemistry and found myself emotionally drawn to the beauty and basic order of science. The way cells work is so magnificent that learning about it always gave me a thrill. When I studied and later taught the mechanism by which the proteins are made in cells, I always felt a chill down my spine. When I read that, really reminded me of a similar experience I had in college in my second year, taking botany class, and their lectures on the mechanisms of DNA replication. And wow, I can still remember that feeling when I saw the beauty, the intricate chemistry going on there. And just saying, wow, how could that just come about? And it gave me a chill down my spine. It was kind of a transcendental experience. I was wanting to ask the group here to share their experiences of anything that similar feeling they've had, a chill down your spine when you feel like you've met God. So,
You know, those personal experiences are so difficult to talk about, Phil. We may need a little time to reflect on that question. Hi, Phil.
how's it going, Stacy?
Well, it sounds great, but you can't seem to hear us or the responses. Now, most of us muted ourselves, but I mentioned I thought that that was such a big question. I have such a hard time talking about those because they're so personal. I'm not sure if anybody feels they can share, but you might give us some time to think about that question. And once we're off of Zoom, be able to come back on to that. Yeah.
I'll say one thing. This is Wendy. Can you hear me, Phil?
I can hear you, Wendy. Phil's muted.
Okay. Now I'm feeling how the deaf person feels. I can't hear any of your wonderful response to that, so I did call Stacy to find out if I'm coming across. So I want to then move on to his conversion experience. And it's in this chapter called The Call to Faith. He says, I found myself asking scientifically forbidden questions. Why? Why did life evolve? Is there a purpose or direction to evolution? These are scientifically forbidden because science really can't answer the question why. All these wonderful things that God has done. So he sort of started listing down things that he believed to be true, and developed his worldview. And he concluded that he just had reached the point where he says, my certainty that there was nothing in the universe that could not be scientifically described was gone. And so he moved from becoming an atheist to becoming an agnostic. He wasn't really sure. He says, I simply didn't know, and I doubted I ever would. So in the subtitle in this chapter was Crossing the Threshold, and he describes his conversion experience in his 40s. And so I'm going to hopefully show this video clip that in his own words, he describes that. And I hope this does come across clearly.
Anything that would contradict it. So there I was with all of these questions, mostly about, well, wait a minute, what about this? What about that? And having dreams, which are in the book. I'm not going to talk about the dreams. And then eventually the dreams sort of introduced me to Jesus as a figure. I had 2 dreams where Jesus was there. I didn't know it was Jesus, but he clearly was there. It was a man who said things, and that was clearly Jesus. But I was awake when I was brought over the threshold, and that was, again, I was driving and again I was listening to the radio, but this time it was a Christian preacher on the radio, a Christian radio station. This was in the middle of Pennsylvania. And I started thinking about, I was very excited by hearing this guy's voice, although I wasn't really following what he was saying because I was not a Christian and I didn't know what all of his words meant. But he was a great speaker, as so many pastors are, so many preachers are. And I was thinking, gee, you know, I like to talk. What would I say if I were if I were actually a pastor? I remembered what that student had told me way back. And I thought I would start talking about, you know, what I had been talking about, you know, the beautiful way that life works, that proteins are made. And I started thinking, what would I say? What would I say? And then the words just came to me, and they didn't come from me. They came, I don't know. Well, I didn't know where they came from. Now I do. And words just came to me, and they had nothing to do with science. They had nothing to do with all of my questions and interests. They were just about love. And I saw myself preaching to a crowd outside somewhere. I don't know, maybe in the South, maybe in Texas. I don't know. And I was talking about that. I was telling the crowd that God loves you. And I know this because Jesus Christ loves even me. And I said even because I knew what kind of a sinner I am. I was and I am. I knew that I had denied him. I had done some terrible things in my life. I had denied him and his people, his spokespeople, and yelled at them and done some bad things. And yet somehow I was saying in my mind that Jesus loves me, and if he can love even me, how could he not love you? Who grew up in the faith, who has been a Christian for so long. Maybe you've swayed a little, but not the way I have. And he loves you. And that was my sermon. That came from nowhere within me. It came from the Holy Spirit. And somewhere in the middle, I had pulled the car over, which was very lucky because I finished the sermon and I just, you know, that was it. I just started bawling and crying, and I knew I was a Christian. I knew the Holy Spirit had come to me and given me those words, which I had said to myself. And that was it. And that was it. And so that's how I became a Christian. And now I have to add something.
Okay, did that come through okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so he just simply said that he opened his heart, let go of whatever was in the way, and there it was, grace. So when I heard his story, it reminded me of C.S. Lewis's conversion. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but he took a ride to the zoo in the sidecar of his brother's motorcycle, Warnie, and he said, when we set out, I did not believe that Jesus is the Son of God. And when we reached the zoo, I did. So, an intellectual sense to faith, but also there's still always an emotional set like that. He said he wasn't going to talk about dreams, and he talked about dreams a little bit, and that reminded me again of Muslims are very interested in their dreams and what they say. And a couple of years ago, I think I did a book for our group that was Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus by Neil Kreshe, and he had a similar type of thing. So was wondering from the group here if any of you all had any version experiences later on as an adult, and how that was approached. What was your experience? I'll open that question up to the group. You can talk about that for a second. If Stacy can give me some kind of sign to go on.
For me, those are such personal things, Phil. It's really hard for me to speak to that without becoming a real, emotional wreck. Janet knows, I'll do that at the drop of a hat. So I will say there are certainly times. I had a pastor in my distant past that used to refer to those quick prayers that you offer as white lightning prayers. And that phrase has stayed with me over time, that oftentimes if I find myself in a situation where I don't know what to say and I want to express something, either comfort or reconciliation or something to reach the other person, I don't know what to say. And I will offer that white lightning prayer mentally before, and then just as he found, the words that come out of my mouth aren't my words. So I trust that they are the right words in the situation because they're not coming from me. And so I have experienced that on, I would say, numerous occasions. Wendy had a comment as well. I don't know if she can join us, but she had a comment earlier on. Wendy, you're back. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. We're taking comments. Phil is taking comments on experience.
I'm trying up here. Our technology is not the greatest. Can you hear me?
Hey, good news. I can hear you now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I was going to go back to the first question, and I'm having a lot of trouble understanding what Phil's saying, but I think his first question was, when have you been confronted, I'm paraphrasing it, with magnitude of God's power and creativity? Was that sort of what that first question was getting at?
The chill that goes down your spine.
Yeah, the chill that goes down your spine. I think most of us who have ever had kids, have that chill when the baby's born. But my oldest daughter, Carrie, and her husband, after having a successful and easy first pregnancy, had a lot of trouble getting pregnant the second time. And she had to go through infertility treatments that were quite rigorous and very challenging for her. And she recently, the baby, Emerson, that was born in April, was 4 months old. And on the day that she was 4 months old, she did the obligatory social media photographs of her 4-month-old. And she finished with a picture of the embryo, literally the 6 or 8 cell embryo that was, implanted. And that was one of those occasions for me, thinking about what God did. It's really visible when you see that little thing and realize, that 12 months later, you've got a 4-month-old baby. So that was a chill down my spine kind of moment.
I hear you. Definitely. Anybody else? I am glad to be hearing you all now. I just had a wrong setting on my setup here. Okay, I'm going to then show a real brief clip here about his experience of joining a church. And I want you to listen to what he has to say about the Presbyterian church.
I described to some degree I guess I started thinking about these in my 40s, and that was the result of my disillusionment with atheism, with materialism, but Christian. And it's been about, I would say, roughly between 12 and 15 years that I began identifying myself as a Christian. It took a little longer for me to actually go further and get baptized and join a church, that happened about 7 years ago. So I was in my 60s when that happened.
I understand that you're part of a Methodist church?
Yes, I'm actually the lay leader of my church, the United Methodist Church. It's still the United Methodist Church. We'll see what happens.
So what is it that led you to a Methodist church?
I found a parking space.
Fair enough.
I was looking for a church. I decided it was time to join a church. I knew almost nothing about Protestant churches. I knew a little bit about Catholicism. I grew up in Brooklyn. Christianity was Catholicism in Brooklyn, and I never met a Protestant until I was, I think, in college in New York. So I didn't know much. I was looking at everything. I went to a Presbyterian church. I couldn't find a parking space, so I drove away. And then I went to this Methodist church. I parked. I went in. I heard a great sermon, and I went over to the pastor, or actually she came to me and asked if there was anything she could do for me. And I said, well, I'm thinking about maybe getting baptized. I told her a little bit about my story. And she said, okay, we'll do it next week. So that's it.
That's that. Well, if you guys want to learn more about Cy, I've linked a lot of his stuff in the description of this video.
I described this. It's some.
Okay, I see from Stacy's laughter that came through okay. Anyway, now I'll shift gears here quickly to talk about the subject of faith and proof. Cy has explained his conversion experience, but he still has a lot to work out in terms of faith and reason, faith and proof, because he's a scientist. But he can't really realize, he realized this a long time ago, that science can't answer everything. He says the denial of any knowledge other than the scientific kind gives us a distorted view of reality. A few more quotes from his book here on this subject. Cy says, science and knowledge are not synonymous. Okay. In other words, there are other kinds of knowledge that are not scientific. They fall outside the methods of interest or interest in science. It seems to go against my scientific training, he writes, and my certainty that scientific inquiry is the best way to get to know the reality of the natural world. He also says, like many other human attributes, faith is not subject to scientific methodology. So what he's going after here is scientism. And scientism is the view that science is our only means of truth or human knowledge. And scientism is a philosophical position, actually. And interestingly, it cannot be verified or falsified by science itself. It's just a way of viewing the world. It's no better than our view that there is more to this world than science. And so I thought of two examples of that. One is love. I can tell my wife that, oh, I love you, but that's just a bunch of chemical reactions that are occurring and electrical stimuli in my brain and such. So what good is that? I mean, love, we all know, is more. The other example I had was when my granddaughter was born. I have two granddaughters. And I look at them, and I never, this feeling I had, a tremendous love for them. I told their mother, daughter-in-law, who's not a science person, I just said, I know your daughters are not special, but they are to me. And the only reason I feel that way is it's evolutionary response. I want to propagate my genes through history or something, but no, that's not it. There's more to that. So I was wondering what your experiences were about obtaining knowledge outside of the scientific kind, if this makes sense to you.
Like your daughter-in-law, I am not a science person. My mind isn't wired that way, and I don't think that way. So it's always something that I have to challenge myself to reach out and figure out the science behind something. And I'm happy to say I've relied on Phil a time or two in the past to help me with that, because as I'm slogging through scientific research that doesn't really connect with me, I need a sounding board that can look at that same scientific research and point out the connections that I can grasp from it. So I value my scientific friends for many reasons, but that's one of them. And I can empathize with your daughter-in-law who isn't a scientific person and doesn't need to address situations that way or doesn't feel compelled to.
Good point. Doesn't feel compelled to. All right, well, in closing here, Sai says he, as he looks at science, he loves science, he's a scientist, it's in his blood. He says the first gulp from the glass of science will turn you into an atheist, but at the bottom of the glass, God. I thought that was a very good summary of his thing. It also, there were a couple other quotes here from that made me think about was C.S. Lewis. This is not in the book, but I always love this quote. C.S. Lewis says, "I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen. Not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else." That's okay. And then there's another one from Blaise Pascal. In creation, there's enough light for those who desire only to see, and enough darkness for those of a contrary disposition. That really speaks to this somewhat hiddenness of God, but I think that God wants it that way. So these are the final points on that topic, is that this observation is perfectly in keeping with our God of love, who desires mankind to seek him by faith. Thus, science can only point us toward where it cannot go. And this is a lesson we must all learn when it comes to blending faith and science. And I think Cy Garte's book here is an excellent contribution to that end. So I appreciate your attention. Any final comments on this subject? Do you all know anybody that is scientifically sort of bent and might benefit from me?
Well, it's on my reading list now, Phil.
Yes.
And I appreciate you telling us that it's often witty and funny as well, because I would have a hard time slugging through just a science journal. But if he puts it in terms like he has in the quote you've used, where I can visualize or feel it or see it in a different way, a non-scientific way, then it's accessible for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you read Language of God, didn't you? You mentioned that you read Language of God by Francis Collins.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. It's somewhat similar to that. A little bit more science.
Mhm.
Too much.
I'll call you before I come back.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
All right, Stacy, I appreciate, again, everyone's help and attention on this. What's next week?
It's very
Look
interesting.
forward to hearing from Wendy next week, and the week after it'll be Janet Benray.
Okay.
who I think has also had some tech problems. So I think she will be sending her presentation from my house. So I'll be sitting in the background while she does that. Prescribed 6 feet away, but I will enjoy the fact she may be out of town or not present at the moment, but I think his note on no parking was a cautionary tale for all of us. I know we've struggled with parking at our church before and whether or not to buy the parking lot, which as it turned out, they took off the market then. And I think that current group would really have loved to have seen First Pres buy the parking lot, but somebody else had turned up that was going to outbid us and wanted to build a high-rise hotel. So they simply removed it from the market, which I certainly appreciated. Hope we'll have another chance because I think the parking is critical, and I think he gave it a side comment that really brought that back into focus for me. So that and lots of other things. Phil, thank you very much. We enjoyed the presentation, and I know the technology was difficult for many of us, but I appreciated your doing what you did on Zoom. I think hearing from the author himself really added to our enjoyment here.
Yes, very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Thank you.
I'm going to be off to Fellowship Cafe in about 15 minutes, so hope to see some of you there. And then otherwise, Maren is back doing her Thursday morning Bible study, which is real enjoyable. I think some of you go to that with me. Wendy has chimed in and said the Wednesday evening online presentation has been really good too, so I plan to give that one a go. I think it's out of Atlanta or some such thing. Anyway, it sounds like an interesting study, and I'm going to tune into that this Wednesday. Obviously, I'm drinking in all these Zoom contacts I can get. My cat and I are tired of looking at each other. So at any rate, look forward to seeing all of you next week, and thanks so much for being here. Again, thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Stacy. Bye.
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 Bye all.
Get out. Oops. Oh, whoops. Leave meeting. Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.